Welcome, everybody. And I'm Mark. I'm one of the Amsterdam and one of the Dutch tour guides on Hago. If you haven't met me before, welcome. And hey, Sue, welcome, and Alison. So lots of people here today. We're very special. It's the first trip for me down to the flower bulb area. And what I'm going to do today is start off with these two little daffodil fields. And then I'm going to cycle 2 minutes and I'm going to take you to some spectacular hyacinth fields. So that's what we have on the go. And yeah, does anyone not know how this works? This is your first online tour experience. If that is the case, if there's a drop in quality of sound or image, then you need to just refresh the page. It's tip supported. If you want to make a donation, much appreciated. And you can chat to me in the chat. If I miss your question, I apologize. Please ask it again. I'm not trying to avoid it. The tulips should start blooming in a couple of weeks, I think. And yeah, I will try and answer all your questions. If I don't know the answer, I'll certainly say so. But let's get started. Thanks, Sue. Thanks, Hilary. So here is a field of daffodils. And we call them daffodils in English. Oh no, the hyacinth fields, Lynette, are astonishing. So, and they're just right all the way along there. And we'll walk all the way along those as well. They're definitely the star of the show today. So yeah, daffodils in English, in Dutch and many other languages, narcissus. That was actually from when Linnaeus categorized them, a Dutch botanist, centuries ago. But anyway, part of the amaryllis family. Very often yellow, but also whites and peaches and combinations of those colors. Native to southern Europe and North Africa. So they like full sun. And they don't like soggy ground, waterlogged soil. And this is why they grow kind of well here. This part of Holland is behind the sand dunes. So the dunes are to the left 4 kilometers, 2.5 miles, and then the sea is the other side. And this area here is slightly elevated and sandy soil. Very different to the sort of the peat marsh soil that you would have found just slightly inland from here. And slightly elevated and with lots of ditches that have been dug. Why are you in my map showing the last tour? Don't know. How weird. And so yeah, look at the sand. It's really sandy. It's not at all like the soil where I was dancing amongst the tulips up in the Beemster. That's heavy, heavy, heavy clay. But this is very, very sandy soil, so completely different. And the area I'm in is called the Bollenstreek. And just for other guides watching who want to know where it is, the little town in the distance there is Hillegom. So that's how you can find the hyacinth fields if you want to go there. Okay. Check out these little babies here. So these are very small little narcissi, but it's a small variety. It's not like they're going to grow any bigger. And they were planted in the fall, in autumn, and then they develop a root system over the winter time because the cold sort of triggers the growing process. And then the plant pops up in early spring. And what do they use for mulch? Well, they'd grow in this very sandy soil. And yeah, they just do particularly well in it. No, it's natural to here. And, tulips are interesting because they grow very well here, but tulips also grow spectacularly well up in the heavy clay. But that's not the case with hyacinths and with narcissi. They don't like heavy clay. So, plants are different. There's two ways of growing plants here. They grow them for the cut flowers, And then they also grow them for the bulb that is under the ground. So typically, when these things are grown for the cut flowers, they're grown in greenhouses generally, and they put those bulbs, so they kind of stake them into trays, and then they feed them often with like a mineral water solution. And then they keep them at varying temperatures in different huge, big refrigerated rooms. And then they bundle them up into bunches that they're going to sell. And they go off and they're sold with the flower still wrapped up in a bud that hasn't opened yet. So that is how, yes, I am indeed South African, but I left there in 1991, so that is well spotted. These ones are grown for the bulb under the ground. Okay, so the bulb gets planted, and this pops up in early spring, and then the flower dies. And actually, they just leave it, and then they lift it up in the summertime. Okay. And I'll explain that a bit more. It takes one to recognize one. So yeah, have a last look at this field, and then we'll go and have a look at the other field, and then we'll head down to the, as I say, the star of the show today, which is going to be the hyacinth fields. With the bulbs here, you just run up the bank. You think, well, they planted a bulb, right? And they're growing it to sell the bulb. So where do they get the bulbs from? You don't need permission, Sarah. You just kind of go to the fields. What the farmers will do if they don't want you in their fields is that they will put a sign up saying don't enter. Question, are the bulbs healthier if the blooms are left uncut? I'd like to explain that. I was going to do it. Let me do that at the next field where they're bigger. Okay, and I can show you something more about that. By the way, this big bank of earth here is a dike. Yeah, a D-I-K-E, or levee, sometimes people call them. So it's a defense potentially against the water. And if you look here, today you can say you've seen a bike on a dike. So there you go. Here's my little bike. I don't know how many acres the field is. I'm rubbish at telling the acreage of a field, just looking at it. It's never been one of my abilities. Let me just unlock. Sorry, I'm going to jiggle you around a little. And you know what? You got that one, yeah? Okay, so I just need to put the stand on again. I was taking the stand off so I could get this lower to the ground. But let me just pop you down, unlock the bike, and then we'll be off. Okay, here goes. Is the airport? The airport is the other side, the other end of the Haarlemmer Meer, or the Haarlemmer Polder. So there's a massive, great big lake between Haarlem and Leiden and Amsterdam that was drained in the 1800s. And that is where the airport is. Oops. And we'll pop down to this field here. And say hello to the llamas if we can see them. There's nothing quite as cute as llamas and alpacas, are there? Oh, here they are. As curious as a llama. Hello. Excuse me. Can you have a look? You smile for the camera. No, not interested. Oh, well. Oh, yeah. Hello, you. You're an internet star now. Did you realize that? No, don't care. It's, okay, just pop down here. This is where I almost fell off earlier because it becomes very sandy and these wheels are minuscule, but oh! Okay. Right, here we go. Okay, now we'll be fine. Look at this silly bike though. It's got the strangest little wheels. Okay, daffodils are all basically the same shape. They tend to have these trumpets and then 6 petals around. These are really beautiful little baby ones. And what the farmers here have done, look, this field's not ready yet. I mean, it's still coming into bloom. But if these were being sold as cut flowers, they would be cut off when the flower was still like that, as I'm sure you know, because that's how you take them home, and it's only once you pop them in a vase of water that they're going to open up. For those of you who are just joining, this is the last daffodil field, and then we're heading down to the hyacinth fields, where there's 4 different colors of hyacinths and millions of them. Okay. But let's just check out some different varieties of daffs. Very pretty. You can see why flowers are such big business here, because they're just so gorgeous. Here's some double ones. So these are bred to have double the amount of petals. And oopsie. Excuse me. These are really teeny. I don't think I've ever seen such small ones as these. Have a look at these. They're so small. It's like the size of my finger. If I could just try and keep it still so it's moving in the wind. Wow. Minuscule. So daffodils produce their own internal pesticide, which is quite common. We've seen some of these already further up, haven't we? I'm not sure what naturalized means, but they do have their own pesticides in them. These compounds have been isolated and I believe used in MS. And somebody said MS earlier. I'd not heard of that. In Alzheimer's and dementia medication. I love these ones probably most of all. Just the subtle light pinks, so gorgeous. And they're toxic, to dogs and cats and horses. But thankfully, dogs and cats and horses, they ain't stupid. They don't go eat. Oh, look at these ones. See if I can climb up the fence a little. These are so vivid. Gorgeous. Oh, pretty. Huh. Yeah. Okay. Now, here are some kind of regular ones. I've often found, especially in England, where you just get so many of these just block yellow ones, I almost find them, it sounds like very snooty to say, but I find them almost a little vulgar. And it's the ones with the real peachy pinkiness that I far prefer. But here we are. And what I wanted to explain a little bit more about is, and somebody brought up, Catherine, I think, is, can't grow them for love or money, is what are they growing them for? They're growing them for the bulbs underneath the ground. Okay. So, and it's the same for daffodils and tulips and hyacinths. What happens is that you plant a bulb under the ground, one, and then over the winter and the early spring, it develops what I call baby bulbs. The real word is an offset bulb. So the bigger bulb under the ground has the smaller ones along the side of it. And what they do is that they separate those off and they store them and they plant those the next year, but they sell the big one to us. So that's how that works. Now, there is a difference with different types of flowers as to whether or not, or how to get a bigger, stronger bulb. I wasn't really going to talk about tulips that much this tour, but with a tulip field like this, just imagine these were tulips, yeah? Then what would happen is that once the tulips were in bloom like this, they have what's called a topping machine, like a big lawnmower that comes along and it cuts off all the flowers. Because they're not growing it for the flower, they're growing it for the bulb under the ground. So by cutting off the flower, the tulip flower is no longer drawing any energy, but the leaves are left. And they will leave the leaves there. I'll leave the leaves. And they'll be photosynthesizing, putting energy into the bulb onto the ground that gets lifted up in, say, July. Now, they do not do this with daffodils, or hyacinths for that matter. Not all plants are the same, and they don't need to do this with a daffodil. They never do it, because the daffodil flower doesn't drain the bulb under the ground. So the daffodil flowers are just left to die on the plant. And they will wither away, and you will see this over the coming weeks. And then later on, the bulbs will be lifted out of the ground. So that's how that works. Yeah. Well, yes and no. I mean, what happens is that they end up being accumulated in these tracks between, and they decompose and they go back into the soil. So nothing is wasted in nature in that way. Why not sell them? Because Sada, they already bloomed. So who's going to buy a flower that's already bloomed? If you're going to buy one to take home, you kind of want it to not be open yet so that it opens at home and then you can enjoy it, as opposed to taking one home and you've only got it for a couple of days. So that's why there's no commercial use for these flowers. As I said, they're not being grown for that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, as I said, nobody would buy them. But anyway, let me just stand on again. It's easier when I'm cycling. We've got about a 2-minute cycle now. I'm going to push it up the hill to the hyacinth fields. These, Carol, are being grown for the bulb under the ground, so that we buy the bulb and then we plant it. Good to know that. Yeah. So that's what those are grown for. Thanks very much for your donations, by the way, much appreciated. Look, you can just get a bit of pinkiness in the sky as the sun going down, or starting to go down. Okay. Now, with daffodils, by the way, so ancient civilizations, Greeks particularly, knew the daffodil for its beauty, but also for its medicinal purpose. And bearing in mind it was called a narcissus, and that is actually where the word narcotic comes from. And this is because of the legend of Narcissus, who became intoxicated with his own image. So as I'm cycling along, talk about a little bit of Greek mythology. Okay, Narcissus was exceptionally hot. He's a very, very handsome son of a river god and a nymph. And there was an old prophecy that if he ever saw himself, he would have a short life. Actually, the prophecy was the other way around. If he never saw himself, he would live a long life. Now, he was interested in hunting. That was it. he wasn't interested in love. And various people made a big play for him. The nymph called Echo really, really wanted to, wanted him, and he spurned Echo's advances. And Echo was devastated and just faded away into nothingness. And now all that's left of Echo is her voice, which we hear echoing sometimes. Hey, welcome, Pamela and Marge. There was another admirer who he spurned. Yeah, you can just see the hyacinth fields there coming into view now with the pinks and the purples and stuff. Yeah, he spurned another very, very beautiful virgin who threw herself at him, and she was, well, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, they say. And she was devastated, and she prayed to the gods that he would know the feeling of unrequited love. And the goddess Aphrodite granted her prayer. What happened is that Narcissus stopped at a sacred pond to have a drink of water, and he leant down to drink the water. And he saw an image or the reflection of himself, and he was absolutely transfixed, and he fell deeply in love with his own image. And what he did is he went down to try and kiss his own image, and as soon as he kissed it, of course, he disturbed the surface of the water, and his image disappeared. And he was staring, and it came back, and he felt happy, and he was very unhappy that he couldn't actually, ever possess his image. He cried, and even in crying, he disturbed the surface of the water with his tears, and his image disappeared. And yeah, he just couldn't look away from it. He didn't want to eat anymore. He didn't eat. He didn't drink. He wasted away. He lost his color. He lost his beauty, and he died. And Aphrodite allowed him to live on in the form of the narcissus flower. And that's the story about how, one of the stories about how the narcissus flower came to be. A modern interpretation of this is the Oscar Wilde story, A Picture of Dorian Gray. Again, another story of beauty, love, and vengeance and death. And both Narcissus and Dorian were narcissists, of course, spreading evilness and dreadfulness in the world. It's chilly. And there we can leave Narcissus, because now we have come on to Hyacinth. Okay. And check this one here. Yes, anybody who's been a victim of narcissistic abuse will look at that flower and shudder a little and think, why name something so lovely Narcissus? Yes, now this really is spectacular. It's just amazing. So I'm going to show you from up here, and then walk along and lock up the bike, and then take a slow walk all the way down, because you can see there's pink, and then lilac, and then red, and then purple, and then more pink, and literally just millions and millions and millions of these flowers. The scent is phenomenal. Yeah, quite lovely. And my hands are frozen. I keep thinking it's spring. Well, I suppose it is. Look at the nice color there. Little pinkiness of the sun. Okay. Let me just pop you down here for a sec when I lock the bike. Oops. I'm sure I don't actually need to lock the bike here. Okay. How peaceful. Can you hear the bird song? Yeah, look at these houses here. These houses are literally looking out over this. Okay. Astonishing, eh? But yeah, it's just so brief that they get this view. Okay. There really is a lot of birdsong. It's so nice to hear. I don't get that in Amsterdam. In Amsterdam, the birdsong is like the seagulls. Excuse me. But there are all these birds in the hedgerow. Okay. Yeah, we'll get those. Oh my goodness gracious me, the aroma is quite overpowering. Again, these are, I don't know how long they'll be in bloom. They look pretty much like they're at their peak. So these have been in bloom for, I'd say, at least a good, looks like at least a good 2 weeks. I am Janice. I'm just outside a little town called Hillegom, Hillegom, in an area called the Bollenstreek in Holland. Real close up here. Literally millions. Okay, how are the edges of the rose so straight? Well, excuse me, sniffling. Allergy time, and this probably the aroma doesn't help. There is a machine that they use for planting bulbs, obviously, and it's towed behind a tractor. And the tractor wheels go here, and the planting machine goes behind me. It's not actually, the planting machine is not really from, yes, those are the tractor ones. Yeah. So, yeah, that is why they're so evenly spaced. And of course, they can do all sorts of other things. You know, they have other types of machines which can go in the same track, whether it's for irrigation or a pesticide application, who knows what. Very, very beautiful, huh? So that's why, you know, they're always the width of a tractor, a tractor's width. So these again, they're planted as bulbs, and they're planted, and they're going to raise the bulbs up and sell those bulbs. And exactly the same as the daffodils, these flowers will be left on the plant to die. Yeah, there are a couple of other colors in. They don't get topped. They're going to get decapitated like the tulips. Different process for hyacinths and daffs. Is there a story about hyacinth? Is there a story about hyacinths? Probably about nicer people. Well, let me tell you the story about hyacinth then, since we're on mythology. It's a fascinating one. Well, let me tell you about the hyacinths themselves first, so we know what we're looking at. So the daffodils were from Southern Europe and North Africa. Hyacinths are native to the Eastern Mediterranean, so Turkey, Iran, Iraq, Israel, that kind of place. And yeah, they generally come in white or pink or blue or purple. And clearly we're in the pink section here. They are poisonous. You got to use gloves when you handle them. And in the 1600s, there was the real kind of tulip mania in Holland. And then in the 1600s, there was a tulip bubble, and a lot of people, you know, kind of got their fingers burnt with that, figuratively. And then hyacinths came into their own, and hyacinths were the hot flower of the 1700s. And the Dutch actually made 200 different varieties, but only 50 are now grown. And they're really grown. This is the country for growing hyacinths now. They're very different from the original ones, of course. You have orange ones. Wow. Cool. I love the color orange. Now, they are exceptionally vulnerable to viruses. Daffodils, not so much. And often, yeah, I've never seen grape hyacinths in fields, but that I can remember anyway. But obviously, they're also grown for their bulbs. Now, the thing is, with hyacinths, daffodils can withstand viruses very easily. Look at these two colors here. Daffodils are really hardy. So the farmers generally don't mind if you walk in their daffodil fields between the flowers. Tulips, they're quite hardy. Hyacinths, very vulnerable to viral infections. Okay, so really, farmers do not like, and they do not want people walking and trying to do an underneath shot in their hyacinth fields. And when the public do that, they mess it up for everyone, because then you start to get the farmers. Oh, hang on a sec. Oh, goodness. Huh. Cancel. Oh, cancel. Oh, my gimbal went to sleep. I was trying to do an underneath the gimbal shot. Okay, so people shouldn't walk in hyacinth fields. However, you will occasionally see somebody, just one lone person, or up on the farm where I go, there's always two because the farmer and his wife do it together. Yeah, Charlotte. So what happens is that you'll see somebody right in the middle of the field over there, just kind of slowly walking through with their head down, doing something. Now, what they are doing is they are looking for infected flowers. And the way that they can tell that it's infected is by, certainly with the tulips, it's a bit easier. Some discoloration on the flower itself. And with the hyacinths and with the tulips as well, there'll be signs of the viral infection on the green leaves like this. Usually streaks on the leaves, and that makes it slightly visible to the naked eye. And then what that person in the field is doing is breaking off the flower about there, yeah, and then applying a drop of glyphosate poison onto the broken stem so that it kills that one particular bulb underneath the ground, because they do not want that infected bulb infecting the flowers around it, because you could lose the crop that way. So that's what they're doing when they walk through, and then that bulb dies, and then by the time they lift up all the bulbs, that bulb is disintegrated and gone, long gone. Oh, wow, can you hear the thunder? Look at there's a thunderstorm over there. Is the thunder coming through on the mic? I have absolutely zero cover here. But anyway, it looks quite bright above me. Hopefully it's a very localized thunderstorm. Anyway, where was I with this one? So yeah, it's really very important not to walk in the hyacinth fields. And then that job of taking, oh, so beautiful. Just look at this. So thunderstorm over there, and then look how nice this is becoming. The pinky glow of the sinking sun behind the dike over there in that farmhouse. Oh, there's thunder, there's lightning. The way you love me is frightening. So here are two colors planted together. So they're selling these bulbs in mixed bunches, clearly. Yeah. So lovely. I wanted to try and do some slightly underneath shots. That's when I lost control of the gimbal the last time, and it switched on and off, which is a bore. But oh, thank you. Oops. Okay, let's head. Sorry, excuse me, coughing. Now heads down a bit because we've got the red ones and the purple ones as well. The purple ones are phenomenal. So where was I with the story? So the best thing to do with all of these bulbs when you grow them at home, by the way, is the best practice is to lift them out in early spring, once they've flowered. So, with the, certainly I do it the same way with the tulips, is to cut the flower off and then leave the tulip plant and the leaves until June or July, until they've completely died. And then you take the bulbs out of the soil and you'll see that every one bulb has actually made 2 or 3 more as well. And then you separate those out. Dolly, I think I've seen yellow ones. I think so, but I can't swear on it. And then you store them in a cool, dry place, and then you plant them before the end of November in the Northern Hemisphere anyway, before the first frost, and plant them again, whether you do that in the ground outside or if you do it in a pot. And that is how you can just keep them going on year after year after year. These ones aren't quite in bloom yet, but it is interesting to see how they start out. It looks like these are a much shorter breed, or they just have to grow more. I'm not entirely sure, but this is how they pop out. That looks much more like a grape hyacinth almost, doesn't it, the way it starts out? Thanks, Tatiana and Joan. Much appreciated. And look at these magnificent houses of Hillegom behind here. Just really lovely. It's a very rich area, Hillegom. And for those of you, I've told you about the 6 collection, where you get to go into the house of Baron 6 and see his art collection. Of course, he is Baron 6 of Hillegom. So, kind of, he would be, wouldn't he? Excuse me. And here comes the really impressive ones, the purple ones. People quite often companion plant daffodils and hyacinths, by the way, because rodents will eat hyacinths. I think let's try and get a low-down shot here. Nope. Okay. I'm going to have to... I might lose control of the gimbal again. Try not to. There's not really enough light behind me. Okay. Let's go down this way a bit. Yeah, good. There'll be a nice view down there, just across the water, I think, with a slightly better light. But let's just try a lowish one here. You do get white ones, but just not here. Yeah, deep purple. Ooh, this is where I'm headed, the other side of the water down there, where there's the pink and the purple together. Okay, so we spoke about Narcissus, but there also happens to be a Greek legend about Hyacinth. Okay. Now, it doesn't do my knee any good going down so low and getting up. This may well be one farm. It also could be a couple of farmers getting together and doing the sowing and the harvesting at the same time and cutting costs that way. So Hyacinth was an exceptionally handsome. I don't know how hectares. I just don't know. Okay, I don't know how to calculate hectares and acres. On the farm that I visit, I ask them in advance because I know the farmers, but I would just be taking an absolutely wild guess. But I can say that there are millions of flowers here. Anyway, look, Hyacinth was an exceptionally handsome Spartan prince, and his incredibly good looks attracted the attentions of the god Apollo, who swung both ways. And they became lovers. And Apollo, they used to get around in Apollo's chariot, which was, I mean, this was not camp at all. It was pulled by swans through the sky. Oh, I'm definitely going to be doing Tulips Merrily. So Apollo would teach Hyacinth stuff, taught him how to use a bow and arrow and shoot well and play music on the lyre. He taught him the art of prophecy. Ooh, look at the purple with that orangey sky behind. And get this, they would go to gym together. I mean, what's changed? Okay, so let me just try and get a lower down shot here with the, oh, that's so gorgeous with the orangey sky behind. Yeah, and now it's beginning to rain just a little. So yeah, they would hang out and go to gym together. And then Apollo was teaching him this game of quoits, which was throwing a discus. And Apollo was kind of being all macho and showing off how hard he could, hey, it's hailing, could throw the discus. And he threw it so hard, it went way up into the sky. And it actually split the clouds in half. And then Hyacinth went running after it to catch it. Bad move. And it came down and it hit him on the head. And after bouncing back, and it wounded him fatally, and he died. Now, Apollo was absolutely devastated. He wept. He blamed himself. And he actually said he wanted to become mortal so he could join his lover in death. Well, he seemed to kind of go off that idea quite quickly. But where Hyacinth's blood spilled, from there sprouted and came up the hyacinth flower with its beautiful, beautiful scent every year to remind Apollo of his love. Now, sorry to burst the bubble here, but the hyacinth flower in ancient Greece probably wasn't this one. It was probably a fritillaria or maybe even a delphinium. Yeah, there's the occasional rogue flower. But the story stays the same anyway. Apollo had another male lover whose name was very similar to Cyprus, and actually he also died, and Apollo was also devastated, and from that lover sprung the cypress tree. Staying on the tree theme, Daphne, the daughter of a river god who spurned Apollo's advances, was turned into a laurel tree. Okay. And then Cassandra, a Trojan princess, promised Apollo that she would invite him to her bed if he taught her the art of prophecy, which he did. But then she didn't keep her side of the bargain. So what he did, and don't mess with the son of Zeus, what he did is he let her have the art of prophecy, but with her little caveat that nobody ever believed her. And she didn't have a very nice life. But yeah, let's say Apollo was slightly unlucky in love. Oops. Oh, anyway, it's so great. Absolutely lovely to be in the flower fields again, you know. I love it when this time of year comes up. And I've been coming down here for, I don't know, about 6 or 7 years now. And Yeah, sure. So, excuse me. Oh, chills. Let me talk about that as I'm walking back. Let me just give you a quick panoramic here. Oh, yes, and of course. Oh, by the way, so please do join me. I think it's next week when I'm doing an at home thing. Because what I've done is I have filmed at the farm where I know the people so well. I'll be fine, Karen. I filmed every step of the tulip process. So from when they were planting the bulbs on the big machines, I was riding along on the machines actually, and to the growing and footage of the fields and the harvesting and how they do that and how they sort them. And so I filmed it all. And I'm making a little film for YouTube. But what I decided to do is to do it as an at home tour and use more footage that I was going to use on YouTube. And then what I can do is I can pause it frequently and then really explain to you and show you in exact detail how it all works. And, you know, it is fascinating. I find it wonderful. And it's taken years and years of going, to learn all this stuff and to see it. Often you need to see something. And yeah, so that's going to be in a week. And I think that will give a really good sort of grounding for any tulip field tours that you do subsequently with whoever, because you will have seen, it's in a week's time, I think, Ellen. It's called B is for Bulbs on my channel. But let's talk about the ditches now. This is typical Dutch landscape. Okay, it's not peatlands here. It's quite sandy, but still it's big chunks of field with ditches in between. And okay, Friday sounds right. Yes, it's later in the evening here. I made it later at home because I wanted you not to have to get up early, Sue. And thanks, Margaret. Um, so, because there's so much water in Holland, in the Netherlands for that matter, the landscape is cut up into fields with ditches. And there's an optimum size because if the fields are too big, the water from the ditches can't necessarily make its way to the middle because there's going to be a water table underneath here, And what farmers can do, depending on what crops they're growing, is they can micromanage their water levels on their land. And as opposed to, say, the bigger ditches and canals, which are controlled by the water board. So if they've got a crop that enjoys slightly damper soil, they can raise the level in these ditches. And then if the field's not too big, even the middle of the field, they can influence the water table to influence how that crop grows. Or by the same token, they could dry the fields out by keeping the ditches, lower. So that's how it is. And of course, they're fantastic irrigation ditches. Thanks, Beverly. They're fantastic irrigation ditches because if they need to send an irrigator down these tracks, and the way that would work, by the way, so there would be a tractor with a huge arm on each end, so two big wings, if you will, and those wings have got wheels on them that are spaced to go just down these tracks. And then they can actually pump water into a tube system that goes along with the tractor. So they become a source of water for irrigation as well. So it's a very, it's a really cool system. It's cold. So yeah, there's Hillegom with the two little steeples you can see there from two churches, no doubt one Roman Catholic and one Dutch Reformed. Thanks so much for your donations. I do appreciate it. And then, yeah, I'm going to obviously go to Kokenhof Gardens and also tulip fields. I'm just hanging back a little bit because when I go to Kokenhof Gardens, I want to make sure that the actual tulips in the gardens are in bloom. Because normally at the beginning of the season that it opens, they're still not in bloom. It's the stuff in there, there's stuff in the greenhouses, which are very nice, but the actual tulips in the gardens not. So we'll see. We'll see. And it's open for quite a long time, so I'm not rushing. But I will get there in the end. And that's a pleasure, Dolly. Are there any questions that I missed? And because I've still got a few minutes to walk back to the bike. Oh, great. Awesome, Claire. So many bulbs, hey? Unbelievable. What is the date today? I forget. Is it the first day? It's the 20th, isn't it? 20th, I do remember now. When would be a good time to visit? Well, for the tulips, mid-April is ideal. Last year, of course, by mid-April, they'd only just begun, but then it was a very cold spring. Random colors. Yeah, well, I mean, with this, where there's a mixed bed over there, they're obviously intended that. There's a mixed bed here. So they already know that this is going to be sold as a mixed bunch. You know, where there's just the occasional wrong color from a previous year, they will probably take that out. You know, when they're going through looking for the bulbs of the virus, they may well remove those as well. And then there's going to be batches where it's all the same color. There's no way that they can tell from a bulb what color it is. So they've got to keep very, very good records. And actually, that's one thing I'm going to explain in more detail in the at-home thing I'm going to do with the video. Can we just visit a flower? No, you can just visit. You just got to know where to go, though. That's the thing. If you do come down to the Netherlands, and you can do it wherever you are, and you can always just pop me an email. I don't mind marking on a map where I think you'll be able to find fields if you're going to drive yourself. By the way, I do have a group on Facebook. It's called Mark and Lee's Splendid Amsterdam Adventures. I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but we kind of wanted it to sound a bit like a Hardy Boys Nancy Drew novel. So if you want to get in touch with me, that's a good way. I think on Facebook you can also just search Mark and Lee, and it pops up. And sorry, there was a question from Sue. When do they dig these to get them ready for storage and then sales? I believe in June or July is when they get lifted up. Is it quiet because of the locals? Yeah, it is quiet. Once the tulips are in bloom as well, it's going to become a hell of a lot busier here with locals as well. So it's because there are no tulip fields yet. I don't think locals think it's worth coming out just for daffodils and hyacinths. This is very good timing because now it's raining. You can probably almost see the shower coming across. Oh, well, Pamela, you must stop by at some point, and then let's plan it so I can take time off and show you nice places and things like that. Does the flower? No. As far as the with the flower, does the flower make the bulb bigger? I think, Carol, you're talking about when they chop the flower off or not. So with the tulips, once the flower is at its peak, they chop it off so that the flower doesn't drain energy from the bulb. But that doesn't matter with daffodils and hyacinths. They don't take the flower off. They don't chop it off. They just leave it to die on the plant. because every single activity procedure costs time and money and emissions and all that kind of stuff. So if it doesn't matter with the daffodil or a hyacinth, if the flower dies and stays on the plant, then leave the flower on the plant. There's nothing to be gained. But it's essential on the tulips to cut that flower off. Absolutely essential. And that does make a bigger, stronger bulb for them to sell to the public. And just for those of you who joined a bit late, I'll just run up the bank here and do a slightly elevated, somewhere here I can get through, elevated view over the field. Saw tulips in the fields and gardens in 2018. Yeah. Why are they planted then? Okay. I see. I think I'm getting your question now. Okay, with these bulbs, like a hyacinth bulb, when it's planted, they would have planted one bulb here, a smallish one. And then what that turns into is a bigger one after another year of growth. And it also makes offset or baby ones. And then what they will do is they'll take those offset ones off and store them and plant them the next year after, and sell the big one. Okay, so that's why. Because they propagate by division is the correct way of saying it. Let me just run up the hill. So that's what they're doing. They're growing these bulbs to make them bigger and then to make more seed bulbs for next year. Oh, I love it with that sky. Cool, huh? Absolutely, the scent is astonishing. I mean, it really is. I mean, just one makes a lovely scent. So you can imagine what it's like walking through these fields. It's quite heady, actually. It almost becomes too much sometimes. They don't cut these flowers, no, they die on the plant. Hyacinths, I don't think hyacinths are ever sold as cut flowers, are they? Aren't they always sold as a bulb that we plant? Because you can plant it in a pot or on the ground or even in a glass bulb vase where the roots from the bulb grow down into the water and you can see it. Oh, they do, okay. Huh. No, but not these ones in the fields, no. As I said, that's not what they're grown for. Cool. Well, it's coming up to the hour. And sounds like Marmite. Okay, love it or hate it. I love it. I love it. My best is to have Marmite. So butter and Marmite on matzo is my favorite combination. That's my kind of snack. And I always think I'm just going to have one. And then I end up having 4. It's just the best. Yeah, and I'm not a Bovril fan. I didn't have Marmite is it's an English version of Vegemite that they have in where is it, Australia, and of course it's a slightly different version of Bovril, which is a different base. Reminds you of home, yeah. Oh, anyway, what a lovely view! I'm just so thrilled to have found this great big field, but I do want to love you and leave you. Let me just do one last shot with the Hago hat and the field in the background. So yeah, thanks for joining and take care and enjoy your further travels. If you haven't, you've got to give Pam in Banff go on one of her tours, which are really super. Beautiful place, Banff, unbelievable. It's the type of thing I've learned through Hago that I wasn't aware of before. So it's amazing how to learn about new places in the world like this. The pink shirt wasn't intentional. I don't wear pink because I'm too pinky. But I forgot to bring a jersey, a jumper. And this was in the back of my neighbor's car. It's actually missing one arm. So, yeah, but it does go quite well with the blue and the green and the fields in the background. So bye-bye, everybody. Take care. Thanks for your donations and see you soon.